Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to take the second call on the budget measures, brackets, financial support for newborn children, end brackets bill, which I note, having now had 10 minutes to read some of it, is an omnibus bill which amends both the Parental Leave and Employment Protection Amendment Bill and the Taxation Parental Tax Credit Bill. Now, I note in the general statement, the general policy statement that is with the preamble to the bill, that one of the things that it says is that this is targeted for lower and middle income working families, particularly the extension or the increase in the tax credit. So the tax credit with this legislation will rise from $150 per week for 8 weeks to $220 per week for the first 10 weeks following the birth of a child. But the eligibility has been tightened, and that does give us some concern. The other concern we have with this, Mr. Speaker, is that while it says that it's for lower and middle income working families, it does nothing for the lowest income families. And our policy has always been to extend that tax credit to those who need it most. And we will be putting forward a supplementary order paper to amend this bill to ensure that we could have that happen to those most vulnerable families, the ones that are most in need. Mr. Speaker, what families need is enough to live on. And while we support the principle of extending the tax credit, essentially what would lift them out of poverty is increased wages. And this budget, I have to note, has done very little to ensure that working families and those who are living below the poverty line and are employed and in paid employment are still not able to get ahead. Now, these are the tax credit measures are basically the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And we really do need to be starting to think in preventative terms about raising the standard of living so that we can address those poverty issues, because the costs are socialised. We all pay for them in the end. Mr. Speaker, looking at this legislation, you can tell that this is election year. And I know that there are people on this side of the House who've said it, but for the record, I'll state it again, that this is an attempt by the government to take the benefit of Sue Moroney's private members bill that would have put in place 26 weeks paid parental leave, to take the credit away from her and basically introduce some small measures in the interim, because it's election year. I do believe, and I do agree with that side of the House, that it is cynical. We do support the bill. We'd be mad not to, because it is some small steps towards improving conditions and provisions for particularly women who are bearing children while they're in the workforce. But, Mr. Speaker, our policy is for 13 months paid parental leave. And though this bill is a step in the right direction, to some extent it does feel like lip service. Others have outlined the benefits of paid parental leave, but I will go through why 13 months is actually what we should be aiming for, because we are at the lowest scale in ranked OECD countries for paid parental leave. 13 months means that there is a longer-term approach to child and maternal health.
1 minute.
It's interesting, actually, to hear the arguments that are being presented by the national government around the parental leave provisions that they're putting forward, because they're quite alternative, they're quite oppositional to what they'd said some weeks ago when Sue Moroney's bill was first introduced. But I take heart from the fact that they've started to recognise the benefits of paid parental leave, and we would seek to extend it well beyond 16 weeks and then 18 weeks to 13 months.
Simon O'Connor.
Speaker, I'm very pleased to rise